What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new edition of Holding Court here on the First Day Hoops Report YouTube channel. I am your host, Chris Stevens. Hopefully you all had a wonderful Christmas holiday. If you celebrate other religious or spiritual things during this time of year, hope you're enjoying that. We got basketball this week. There's the Diamond State at Tatnall this year. If you guys forgot, the Diamond State Classic is now at Tatnall School. St. E's is hosting the Viking Classic, which is both boys and girls. The Diamond State is just the girls. There's the Pat Borowski Classic at Lake Forest High School, which is all girls. Then there's, of course, Slam Dunk to the Beach. Got a couple Delaware teams there. And the Governor's Challenge. That's the one that was racking my brain. It was the Governor's Challenge. All right, so we got some basketball this week. But I did want to talk about 2022 in review and something important that I want to touch on briefly near the end. But I don't want to give it too much air, but it's something that has to be addressed. But we'll get to that in a minute. As far as 2022 goes, it was an interesting year for Delaware basketball across the board. You know, for high school, we crowned 2 new champions for the first time in those schools' history in those sports. I think I'll start with Tower Hills boys because I think we didn't give Tower Hills boys enough respect last year for the way they started the season. They had a really good year. Their only in-state losses were to Salesianum and Sanford. That was it. That was it. So when you think about how good that team was last year, and they just kind of collectively flew under the radar because so many of us were paying attention to other teams. You know, there was Seaford, there was Middletown, there was Sal's, of course. Sanford was still very good. Howard had a pretty good year. There were a lot of teams that got some ink and some air above Tower Hill, and they just said, okay, it's cool. You know, we'll just put our head down, go to work, do what we do best. And I've been watching Final Fours in this state for 30 years or maybe even more. And I don't think anybody, boys or girls, has played a more perfect Final Four than Tower Hills boys played in 2022. That is just my humble opinion because – that hot streak that started in the first quarter or so of the Seaford game, it did not end until the end of the state championship game against Salesianum. And there's some important points to point out about that Salesianum game. Number one, Justin Molan got hurt near the end of the Howard game. He wasn't in full strength. I know Justin's in prep school right now, tearing it up. Can't wait to see him in college. The college program is going to get a steal with Justin Molan. That's just my humble opinion. Justin Hines was out because of the incident with the Howard player. And those two guys, one not being 100%, another guy being out entirely, didn't help Salesianum's cause. But you could have put the 96 Bulls, the 2016 Warriors, the 83 Sixers, the 72 Lakers out there, and the way Tower Hill shot, it wouldn't have mattered. That was just a tremendous display. Started in the Seaford game. They just had everything working in the Seaford game, and it felt like they just wore Seaford down. And then once the championship game started against Sally's, they just started shooting and did not let up. I think Davis Bland, of course, who's now at Washington College playing basketball and tennis, of course, probably still hasn't missed since he left Tower Hill back in the spring. And, of course, the Shepherd brothers, Dean and Dylan, played a tremendous game. That team should go down as probably one of the top 20 or 25 as far as state champions go. And of course, when you're talking about the state championship era, you're talking about since 1967. There are a lot of talented teams, and that's something that I want to talk about. That might be something that I do like midweek, talking about some of the better teams in delhs boys and girls basketball history, because Twitter Phil put that seed in my brain when me and Marty Sheehan of the Delaware High School football podcast were, going back and forth on Twitter about it. So that's something I think I want to broach as a topic and, get some extra thoughts from different people on, a little later down the line. But I feel like that Tower Hill team, for the way that we kind of slept on them, and yes, I'm including a lot of people in that, myself included. First Day Hoops Report, I am First Day Hoops Report. And again, I'll talk more about why that's important in a minute. But that Tower Hill team, for what they were able to do under the radar, they won 20 games. They went 20-3. So it wasn't like they were, just like middling along like the 85 Villanova Wildcats or anything like that. They literally were, kicking butt and taking names except for a couple of instances. And it wasn't like Sanford and Sally's beat them in a wash. Like, I went to both of those games. I saw Sanford and Tower Hill twice. Tower Hill won the first one in overtime, and Sanford won the second one at their place after DJ McClendon got hurt midway through the first quarter. And then I saw the Sally's game, which was in doubt until the latter stages of the fourth quarter. And that was when I felt like, okay, maybe this Tower Hill team deserves a little more credit than they're getting. And it still felt like that Sally's or Seaford or Middletown were going to be the champions. Those were my three last year. I picked Seaford. At the beginning of the year last year, I picked Seaford. I'm not going to lie to you. And part of me, again, wants to pick Seaford again this year. But we'll see how it works. But that Tower Hill team, for what they were able to accomplish, and they almost didn't get there because they played a 4 overtime game in the quarterfinals against St. Mark's. And this is what's kind of frustrating about the way the schedule is set up, because as I mentioned in a previous episode of Holding Court, back in the earlier part of this century, the Elite Eight, the quarterfinals used to be all one day at the bottom, boys and girls. Girls was on a Saturday, boys was on a Sunday, or they would switch every other year, either one of the two. And the quarters this year was so intriguing, except for one, because Seaford took care of business against St. Andrews. I think we pretty much had a feeling that was going to work out the way it worked out. But Dover and Sally's going into overtime was a great game. Howard and Sanford, that game wasn't decided until the final seconds. And Tower and St. Mark's went into 4 overtimes. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. And I flipped a coin about going back and forth, whether I was going to go to Tower, whether I was going to go to Howard, because I had just, watched Sally's hold off Dover, and which was probably one of the top 3 or 4 games of the year on the boys' side. And I said, okay, if I go to Tower Hill, because I'm not going to lie, Tower Hill burnt me before. And I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way, because Patrick Kaiser, Coach Monty Heyman and their staff, those guys really have shown me a lot of love. And I definitely want to shout those guys out for just being good people, good human beings, and giving First State Hoops Report, a place to, come shoot games. And I say they burnt me because I went to see them in the pandemic quarters against Seaford, and they took care of business. And I was like, man, I could have found another quarter, because that quarter was over by the end of the first quarter. It was. And I was like, okay, am I going to go to Tower and watch them beat St. Mark's? And I was like, nah, I feel like Howard Sanford's going to be a better game. So I went to Howard Sanford. Howard won that game 46-41. It was like in doubt until the final seconds. I was like, okay. So I made a great choice. But as I'm driving back home and starting to edit the footage and the little bit of photography that I had, everybody was like, yo, the Tower St. Mark's game is still going. I'm like, what you mean it's still going? What you talking about? They're in the 3rd overtime. Now they're in the 4th overtime. It was like, what? And I was like, man, they got me again. But I couldn't avoid them. I mean, I wasn't avoiding them. I was like, well, I can't miss them this time because they're in the Final Four. So went to the Final Four, and shout out to Dylan Shepard. He will not let anybody forget that when I did the First State First State Delaware High School sports debate, as it was back then with John Busby and Marty Sheehan. Now it's just Delaware high school football. Shouts out to John and Marty for doing a great job for high school football all year long. And John made a comment that Dylan didn't take too kindly to. So when I interviewed Dylan after the Seaford game in the semifinals, he was like, oh, so you the one that's – I was like, no, sir. It wasn't me. No, sir. No, ma'am, spam. No, sir. Wasn't me. I don't play them games. But overall, that Tower team did a tremendous job in just kind of flying under the radar and just being a dominant team when they needed to be dominant. Like that state championship game, like I've seen some beat them down. Shouts out to the good brother Bomani Jones. I need another beat them down t-shirt. I wonder if he's still selling those. But yeah, I've seen some beat them downs in my day, but that one right there, whew, that was legendary. We all just kept looking at each other like, are they going to miss? That's like the 5th three-pointer in the first quarter. It's 21-2. It's 21-4 after the first quarter. It's 43 to something at halftime. I can't remember, but I'll have to look it up. But, I'll probably end up talking about it again later. So we're all just like, each other like, is this really happening? Like, it was really good, and it happened. And that Tower Hill team deserves a ton of credit. And that's a school with a lot of history. Like, before there was a state tournament, they were really good in basketball. They won championships in girls sports, guy sports. There was a time, it was 2016. Yes, it was 2016 when their boys swept the tennis tournament. And in the fall, the previous fall, I think it was the previous fall, 2015. No, it was 2016, the fall, when they won the boys soccer championship. And then it was the spring of 2017 when he swept the boys tennis championships. And a handful of those soccer players were also on the tennis team. That's a unique double play. I mean, we talk about players who win championships in like football and basketball and volleyball and softball and field hockey and lacrosse. But to be able to do it in boys soccer and tennis, that's pretty impressive. And Tower Hill is just like, been one of the cornerstone programs of high school sports here in Delaware. But they had never won a basketball championship. They had never been to a Final Four, and they had one of the better players in the 90s in Carmen Wallace. And, of course, Carmen Wallace went on to play at Duke for 4 years. But that Tower Hill team never made it to the Final Four. They made it to the Final Four. This Tower Hill team made it to the Final Four 2 years in a row. They had that heartbreaking loss at Sanford where they were up late, couldn't make free throws. Nana and Joku came up with some big buckets. Sanford made a big defensive play at the end. Shout out Ollie Jones. And that was a heartbreaker for them. So they came back in 2022 with a vengeance. I didn't think that team, that's probably why we kind of fell off. We kind of slept on them a little bit. Like, all right, they had their best chance last year against not a weakened Sanford team. I'll just say a Sanford team that, could have got, but they just couldn't do it. And that was Stan Waterman's swan song, of course. And now, we come into the 2022 tournament like, okay, they're really good, but when is the end going to come for them? And it never came. And they deserve a ton of credit for that, all of those kids. So I just wanted, that was one of the highlights of 2022. 2022 obviously was the year, again, of first-time winners. We just talked about the Tower Hill boys. Of course, we got to talk about the Caravel girls. It is so rare that you have a storybook ending for a player and a coach. It's usually one or the other. It's usually the coach that says, okay, I'm done. I've had it. I've given everything that I have. It's great to go out with a championship. I'll leave this to the next one. That's what Kristen Caldwell was able to do. But she was able to do it with her last prize pupil, if you will. I'm talking about India Johnson, who, of course, is in the rotation for Towson women's basketball as we speak. And when you have that kind of synergy and chemistry between a player and a coach, because that was an emotional state championship game. If you weren't there, you missed a lot of feelings. Raw, unbridled emotion on both sides. Like, that game between Sanford and Caravel, it only deserved an overtime. And that's what we got. And there was so much to like about that state championship game. Like, even with Amaya Carroll being out, that really hurt Sanford. And like I said in the previous episode, Marcus Thompson's not going to cry over spilled milk, but that definitely hurt them. Dallas Pierce played well. Zaid Kilgo had a tremendous fourth quarter. Zoe Kashner hit a big bucket to start the overtime. That's when I thought Sanford was going to win it, honestly, because it was one of those plays where Zaid goes to the bucket and kicks it out, and Zoe's wide open in the corner. I said, okay, that is the one. But they just kept coming. Caravel just kept coming. Josiah Crawford hit a three-pointer from the chicken wing logo of Bob Carpenter Center. Like, her foot was definitely on the wing of the blue head. I didn't see it until later because I was sitting facing that basket, because I was on the floor. I was on the baseline. But I knew it was a deep shot. And it just rainbowed up and went through. And we just looked at each other like, woo-wee. And India brought it home for him. And for a school like Caravel, another school that has been good at a lot of sports like football, basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball, boys soccer, girls soccer, the girls championship was the one missing piece in that trophy case. And considering that Kristen Caldwell was their first girls basketball star, she comes back and coaches for a long time. She has 5 state championship game appearances before this past March. And most of those were heartbreakers. The last one was the Lauren Park running hook shot. We'll talk more about LP in a minute. And that, it just felt like this Caravel team, for all of its talent, just keeps running into these buzzsaws. Either it's Ursuline with the Colegia, it's Conrad with the Colegia sisters. It's Ursuline with Adriana Hahn. It's Sanford with Lauren Park Lane. You know, it just felt like they just were going to keep running into these buzzsaws. And the Sanford team from last year was a buzzsaw. Yes, they were missing their best wing player, perimeter defender, their glue, their senior leader, but that was still a loaded team. And somehow that Caravel team pulled it out. And when we found out that coach was walking away, it was like, wow, she really went out on top. And she said she had been thinking about it for a minute and then said she really didn't decide until the spring banquet. So she was still up in the air even after they won the championship. But to be able to go out like that and have one of your better players of all time, because Kristen Caldwell has coached some very good players. She's had Grace Lang, Caroline Davis, Kyasia Stanford, Michael Morgan. You know, there's talent that, you know, has come through Caravel that she's coached. Brittany Shells. I know Jada McCullough was there for a year. So, yeah, Kristen Caldwell has coached some talent. I mean, there's still some girls there from last year that were really good. And, you know, for her to finally win that championship, you don't pick favorites, obviously, as a journalist, but that was one of those ones where it's like, wow, this is really a feel-good story because been to the well so many times, and then, you know, to finally get that bucket of water, that drink of water that she'd been trying for 16 years. That's a long time in any, you know, coaching profession. You know, I imagine it's probably how Bob Tattersall Sr. felt when Friends won the football championship in 1984. And now that Rob Tattersall Jr. has coached them to it 38 years later, he was the starting quarterback on that team. So I imagine the Tattersall family kind of relate to that. And just any coach that lasts as long as, you know, some of the ones in high school basketball and high school sports here in Delaware in general, you have to have some staying power because, you know, for one, your players have to believe in you, and the parents and the students and the administration have to believe in you. And that's why people like, you know, Coach Caldwell, like Marcus Thompson, John Noonan, Dan Pisani in 3 different schools on the girls' side. And then, you know, you get to the boys' side, you have a Patrick Kaiser, a Taylor Trevison, a Vince Evans Jr., Rasan Matthews Sr., Tom Purse, Gary Lumpkin, all of these great people that coach these kids up. You can't help but just to notice the passion that they put behind it and how the players are inspired by that, how the student sections, the parents, their fellow administrators and teachers. That's what makes Delaware High School basketball and Delaware High School sports in general so great, is because it's still their sense of community here. There's still a sense of community here. I know that in other states, it's kind of sort of getting away from that, and I kind of sort of feel it happening here, but it hasn't gone full tilt as of yet. There's still some community and continuity in high school sports here in Delaware. And that's why it's so dope to see, like, coaches in different sports, you know, break through and see that their co-workers or, you know, fellow coaches and the parents and the fans and all of that, you know, just give them their flowers. I mean, I'm never going to stop talking about giving people flowers, man, because it's important. Everybody wants respect. Everybody wants to be acknowledged for the great job and the great work that they do. And that's why it's pretty cool to see, you know, like a Patrick Kaiser breakthrough, because Patrick Kaiser went to Tower Hill as well. He was an athlete at Tower Hill as well. So him and Kristen Caldwell have the unique distinction of bringing the first championships in the history of their alma maters to their alma maters. Doesn't get much better than that. I know Marcus Thompson will agree because he was you know, he was an all-state performer at Sanford on the boys' side in the 80s, and he's won several championships for the girls' team. So, yeah, that's the high school side of it. I feel like one of the better stories of the year in general, just for overall Delaware basketball, was Elena Deladon's return to the WNBA, because that woman has persevered through back trouble. Like, she missed pretty much the latter part of the last 2 years of WNBA season. She returned to all-star form this year. And that Mystics team, I like that Mystics team a lot. I'm actually a Las Vegas Aces fan, so you know I'm celebrating them winning the championship. But the Mystics were my dark horse pick because Elena was coming back. Tasha Cloud's one of the best point guards in the league. They got Shakira Austin in the draft from Ole Miss. If Shakira pays attention to what Elena does, then whenever Elena decides that she's done playing competitive basketball, the Mystics won't drop off. Shakira Austin is that talented, but she's got to follow Elena's example. That's what, just follow behind Elena Deladon and let the rest take care of itself. But yeah, watching Elena back on the court, watching Benaj Delaney become an all-star at for the second time at the New York Liberty. This is why I say it's really important that our kids understand that, yes, you can do it here. You don't have to go to the galaxy far, far away in New Jersey or the DMV or anywhere else to say, okay, this is where my best chance of exposure is. No, you can do it here. Once again, we have 2 WNBA All-Stars. One played at Smyrna, other one played at Ursula. We had 2 NBA players on television last night. Dante DiVincenzo with the Warriors. Of course, went to Sally's. Bones Highland, St. George's Tech, Denver Nuggets. 4 professional basketball players in the 2 best leagues in the world. And they all played every minute of their high school basketball right here in Delaware. It can be done. But we have to continue to grow the game. We have to continue to have these showcases, have, schools, increase their social media presence, more streaming. I mean, schools that are streaming now, in my opinion, are doing the Lord's work because we can't make it to every game, and being able to just okay, click on YouTube and say, okay, Caravel's playing Smyrna tonight. Let's watch that. Oh, Dover is playing Milford. Let's click on that. That's important because those of us who try to make it to every game but still fall short because most of us have other day jobs or, the folks in, different journalism outlets, they have different assignments. But being able to just tune in either while we're at another game or come back home and, hit the YouTube and watch another game, it's pretty cool. So Delaware basketball, once again, it's not as niche as it once was. There's a chance now that we can send more kids off to get, off to college to play ball and have their schooling, at least in part, paid for. Because I think what people miss a lot of times about recruiting is they think Division I is the only way you can get your schooling paid for. No, there's Pell Grants for Division II, Division III, NAIA, but it's not like a full-blown scholarship like Division I. And they don't handle you feel like they may hand those out like candy, but they really don't. Division II, it's definitely tighter. Division III, there are no athletic scholarships, but you can still get your schooling paid for through Pell Grants. And hopefully this loan situation comes to an end where it doesn't feel like, you have to end up paying $25,000 back once you graduate. But there's still ways to get your schooling paid for and still play basketball. So I feel like that's where a lot of people miss the boat. They feel like, oh, I'm not getting recruited D1. What's the use? Or that Division II doesn't, fit where I feel like I belong. When it really could be the best thing for you. One of the best basketball players in the history of this state went to a Division II HBCU, played 2 years in the NBA, played a multitude of years overseas. Talking about AJ English. You can have the career that you want in basketball. You can play college basketball. It just may not look like what you feel like it should look like. But once you get there, you realize that it's probably where your best fit is. And that's just my opinion on the recruiting wars at the moment. I'll probably talk more about that in another episode. But overall, and yeah, the college kids, that come from here, Lauren Park has just absolutely shown herself to be one of the top 5 point guards in the country. Yes, I said in the country at Seton Hall. And I can tell you now, it's probably at least 100 schools that are kicking themselves because they overlooked her because she wasn't, 5'8", 5'9", or whatever. You don't have to be, basketball, yes, it is a tall person's game, but it's also about the old ticker as well. And you're not going to find kids, boy or girl, with more heart than Lauren Park Lane. You're just not. Look at her. She's going to leave Seton Hall with probably the assist record and the steals record. She's probably going to be among their top 5 all-time scorers, and she absolutely deserves a look in the WNBA draft. And people are going to look at her and say, wow, we really missed the boat. You did. You did. So now maybe you won't look at a player for their height or what school they went to or the fact that they're from Delaware, because we got some kids here that can go. We have kids here who can go. And it would be foolish for college recruiters to just skip by Delaware because it's like, oh, it's Delaware. You can look around. We everywhere. We got kids playing. Once again, we got 2 players in the NBA. We got 2 players in WNBA. We got kids playing Division I ball. We got kids dominating in Division II and Division III. We got JUCO kids that are on the rise. Don't sleep. Don't sleep on the 302. We got it. We got it for you. Just come give our kids a look. And that's one of the reasons First Day Hoops Report exists in the first place. Because I felt like, and this isn't a knock on anyone else in our journalism field, because as I explained earlier in the New Media 101, I'm going to have a New Media 101 session for you in a minute, that not everybody can get to every game. It's just not possible anymore with the way that newspapers have had to consolidate, how radio stations have had to dial back on their sports, how we don't even have an official. Well, that's not true. I'm not going to say that. DETV is a great television station, but they're not covering high school sports as of yet. I imagine Ivan Thomas, the great genius that he is going to get to it at some point. There's no doubt in my mind that Ivan's going to get to it. So just hold tight. But those of us who are old enough to remember Channel 2 and the First State Sports and Jim Hayes, that's a name. That's a blast from the past. If you remember Jim Hayes, hit that like. But it's not like it, we don't have the same outlets as like Philadelphia, where you can send like NBC 10 or a Channel 6 Action News or CBS 3. We just don't have that as of yet. I think we will in the future. But that's why First Day Hoops Reports exist in the first place, because I love the game of basketball. I have a deep abiding respect and history for the history and tradition of it. And I feel like kids don't get enough pub here, and it's no fault of the people that are already doing it, because we're all trying to do the best we can. It's like that Mariah Carey quote, I'm going to do the best I can with what I got. And we all doing the best we can with what we got. There's 302 Sports. There's, the News Journal. There's Delaware State News, or Beta Bay News as they're called now. Everybody's trying. As I said in the very first episode this season, we are not slighting kids. We are not purposely missing anybody. That's not what we do. The resources are just stretched so thin that it's virtually impossible to be able to get to every game to see every kid that we want to see. And that's a lot of kids, because there are some kids that are putting up numbers. There are some kids that are doing work, and we're just missing the boat because we just don't have the time and the resources and the staff and the manpower to just go out. Because once again, First Day Hoops Report is one band, one sound. And I'll say this because shout out to my guy, G. Johnson, one of the best photographers around. He was my staff photographer for the first 3 years of this thing, until I finally had enough money to buy a real camera. And if I asked G to go with a game with me today, he would still get me some shots. And he's been in my ear about a lot of stuff, just trying to promote First Day Hoops Report to the best of my ability. But for the most part, it's just been me. And I do the best I can to make sure I see as many kids as possible, because there's a lot of talent. And there's some kids that kind of fall under the radar because they don't go to a major program. They aren't at a Sanford or Ursuline or Salesianum or a Tower Hill or St. Elizabeth's or Padua or an Appo or William Penn or Howard or Dover or Seaford. We got, we do the best we can. And that brings me to something that I wanted to address briefly, because I don't want to give it too much air, but I don't want to go any further feeling like if I don't speak up for myself and my organization, then I'm just, letting people get over. And I don't like people getting over. And this isn't, out of anger. This isn't out of malice. This is me speaking up for something that I put my heart and soul into for going on 4 years now. And again, I see nothing from this. I don't get paid, and I haven't asked for $1. Yes, I had to GoFundMe actually, because I was low on resources at my old job, and now I have a job that actually pays me worth a doggone. So now I can do myself some favors. But yes, I had to GoFundMe once upon a time, but I don't, charge anybody for pictures or video or have any kind of subscription thing set up for First Day Hoops Report. Everybody's like, you should. And I'm like, well, maybe eventually, but it's not something that I'm too big on, because I just want to establish this first, is let people know that First Day Hoops Report is a thing, it's solvent, it's relevant. I put in the work, G puts in the work when I ask him to. You know, we do this. We cover high school basketball in the state of Delaware, and we do it well. That's my opinion. So that's why it's very important for me to speak up for my organization and myself, because there have been a couple of instances over the years that people have tried to impede the progress and tried to stop me from doing my job. And if you missed it, or if you missed it during the pandemic season, went to Conrad, was told I couldn't. Well, actually, I emailed the AD at Conrad, was told one name more media people being let in for this particular game. Then find out other media people were able to walk up and get in. Then what happened down at the field house on Tuesday at the play-by-play. So let's talk. I walk into the field house on Tuesday, and mind you, I'm DIA credentialed, have been, even when I was freelancing for the News Journal. So it's not like I'm just randomly walking in somewhere trying to get into a game for free. It's not something that's in my best interest as a journalist. Like, I show up to work everywhere I go. When you see me with a book bag, I actually have a book bag now. I used to use a laptop bag. Good Lord have mercy. What was I thinking? Using a laptop bag for cameras. But yeah, now that I have a legit book bag that I can just, tote my cameras with in my notebooks, I'm there to work. I'm not there just to sit courtside and claim that I work harder than anybody else and don't produce any content. That's not how I do. I'm there to work. Always have been, always will be, as long as I'm doing this. So imagine my surprise when I get to the front desk of the Chase Fieldhouse on Tuesday, and somebody says to me, "Who are you?" And this person has seen me before, several places. And I'm not an anonymous person. Like, I'm actually doing a YouTube channel. Like, you can see my face. Like, it's not like I'm hiding behind anything. It's not like I'm totally anonymous. Like, you can hear me coming a mile away. You can see me coming from a mile away. Like, this face is recognizable. I'm not saying it's anything to look at. I'm just saying it's recognizable. So, but anyway, this person asks, "Who are you?" And I have the badges, mind you. I have DIA badges. I still have my 21-22 badges because I haven't got my 22-23s yet from DIA. I have to remind a couple folks of that next week. But it's not probably going to be important until state tournament time, but I got to have my state tournament time, obviously. But I have DIA badges draped around my neck. It's clear as day that I'm there as media. And so this person says, "Who are you?" And this person has seen me many times before and said, "Oh, you're not on the list, so you got to pay $15 to get in." So I paid the $15. Luckily, I had $20 on me because I was going to eat at the Chase Fieldhouse because I planned on staying there all day. Halfway through the Conrad, who they play? John Carroll. Halfway through that game, I said, "Nah, it's the principal. It's the principal of this. I'm out." So I left. And I made a post on my personal Facebook page about it. Few people were like, "Wow, that's messed up. You do a lot for Delaware basketball." And I'm like, "I do, but I'm just gonna let it slide." And G was like, "You let too much stuff slide." And he's right. So, and I won't put anybody's name out there. I mean, the first syllable initials already out there, but whatever. So he was like, "I just walked in with my pass and it was no problem." Oh, okay. All right. So if you're wondering who I'm talking about, I'll just say this. If you check who wasn't at the field house this summer, then you'll find out that this person does not rock with First Day Hoops reporter Chris Stevens for some strange reason. And I don't know why. Because I don't know this person from Adam. He don't know me. But apparently he has a problem with me. And I don't know why. And kids, this is how you address things head on. You don't have to curse. You don't have to get loud. But you don't let people play in your face either. And I'm not going to let this person play in my face either. So let me be clear about this. If you don't know who I am, I'll let you know. My name is Chris Stevens. If you have trouble spelling it, it's CHRISSTEVENS. I am the founding editor. I am the staff writer. I am the photographer and videographer of First Day Hoops Report. I graduated from Delaware State University in 2007 with a degree in journalism. I've been covering high school, college sports since 2002. Before Anything you popped off. I was covering the Delaware State men's basketball team in the NCAA tournament. I covered the Division III Sweet 16 team in St. Mary's County, Maryland in 2008. I have covered high school sports in Delaware and Maryland for 21 years, going on 21 years. First Day Hoops Report, I started on my own dime in 2019. I'm everywhere because I believe in high school basketball in this state. I believe in the talent of these kids. I believe in the coaches. I believe in high school sports in general. And I'm everywhere because I want to be. That's who Chris Stevens is. And that's who I will continue to be. Because if you think that you're going to push me off my square, get me out of my zone by whatever personal issue you have with me, and that's fine. You don't have to like me as a human being. Many people do. If I let one person color how the many other people whose opinions I respect and admire and look up to, who, you know, the ones that do like me and care about me and acknowledge the work that I do, if I let one person mess that up, then I'm doing myself and First Day Hoops Report a disservice. But at the same time, you're not going to number one on my head and tell me it's raining. So we can talk about this like adults. We can talk about whatever your problem is with me or First Day Hoops Report, and we can work it out. Or you can keep being funny, and I can be downright hilarious. Choice is yours. And that's going to do it for this edition of Holding Court with Chris Stevens. Greatly appreciate y'all's time. Next week, on January 2nd, going to do some previews for conference play because we'll start getting into Flight A, Flight B, Henlopen North, Henlopen South, Diamond State, Catholic, Independent. We'll talk about it all. Sorry. I need a drink of water because I really didn't expect to go off the beaten path like that, but I had to address it. And again, I have no problems with people. I go up, I show up, I put in the work, but at the same time, I'm going to address and call out what I feel is nonsense. And what happened Tuesday at the Fieldhouse was nonsense. And the person who's perpetrating whatever issues he has with me is nonsense. That's all I got. But other than that, hope y'all had a great holiday. Hope you have a wonderful new year. And if I don't see y'all either at the Diamond State or the Viking, I will definitely see y'all once we get back in the conference play and the non-conference play in January. So y'all take care of yourselves. Happy New Year. And let's have fun, man. That's all I want. Let's just have fun, with this high school basketball thing, because that's all it is. It's a game. It's a kid playing a game, and we should be enjoying it and not dealing with nonsense. So until next time, y'all be cool.